Hey guys, Cadin here, and this is probably going to be the least serious analysis video I've ever made. I'm not exactly sure what made me think of this idea, but I guess I just thought it would be really funny. Today we're going to be looking at what are, in my opinion, the three worst weapons in this loot pool: the thermal DMR, the scoped burst SMG, and the Havoc rifle, and deciding which one is the worst out of all of them. This is going to be a very close competition because all three of these weapons are pretty damn bad. Who knows, we may even end up with a tie. But anyways, without further ado, let's get right into the comparison. Also use my code, thanks. For this comparison, I'll be doing something different than I usually do and be using a scoring system to compare these weapons. The categories for this scoring will be damage, fire rate, mag size, reload speed, damage ranges, equip speed, accuracy from both aiming and hip firing, the amount of augments that can buff its performance, and time to kill. The highest scoring in each category will receive 2 points, second place will get 1 point, and last place gets no points. If a tie happens, both weapons will receive 2 points if it's a first place tie, and 1 point if it's a second place tie. The weapon with the least amount of points at the end of the video is the certified worst weapon in the current loot pool. Got all that? Alright, now let's start off with the four main stats: damage, fire rate, mag size, and reload speed. And one more thing to point out, I will be exclusively comparing the gold rarities of each weapon for the sake of simplicity. If I went through every single rarity, we'd be here all day. This first section is going to be a quick fire round because all of these stats are clearly outlined when you go to inspect each weapon. For damage, the thermal DMR comes in first place, the Havoc in second, and the scoped burst is last by quite a long shot. Here's a fun fact for you guys: the purple and gold rarity of the scoped burst SMG both do the same amount of damage, and it's been like this since the beginning of the season. Additionally, the gray and green rarities also do the same amount of damage. This may genuinely be one of the most non-functioning weapons in the game, but that's not really important right now. Let's get back to comparing, now with fire rate. This time the placements are completely flipped, with the scoped burst in first place, the Havoc still in second, and the thermal DMR in last. Funny enough, the mag size and reload speed categories have the same placements as fire rate, so that makes things very easy. With that first part done, the ranking currently sits with the scoped burst having 6 points, the Havoc rifle with 4 points, and the thermal DMR with 2 points. Now let's move on to more in-depth analysis, starting with damage ranges. And finally, the thermal DMR takes another win. Not having any damage fall off, it comes in first place. Second place, yet again, is the Havoc, with damage fall off starting at 50 meters and ending at 100, doing 90% damage past max range. And finally, we have the scoped burst, with fall off starting at 40 meters and ending at 80, doing 75% damage past max range, which places it in last place on this ranking. Now I get to go on a rant because we're moving on to equip speed, and the Havoc rifle is finally not taking second place and is going in dead last. The thermal and scoped burst are tied for first, both having the same standard draw speed of about a third of a second. The Havoc, however, takes a little over half a second to equip, which is longer than literally every shotgun in the current loot pool. Why the fuck does an assault rifle take this long to pull out? If you're in a close range engagement and you have a Havoc rifle and your opponent has literally any other weapon, and you both equip your weapons at the same time, by the time you're ready to shoot your Havoc, they'll have already shot you a few times. For this simple fact, I really want to end the video here and say that the Havoc is the worst weapon indisputably, but I won't, because I want more watch time. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the joint category, accuracy. First off, let's compare hipfire accuracy. The Havoc rifle is the most accurate when hip firing, followed by the scoped burst and the thermal. A surprising win for the Havoc, but with aim accuracy, things change quite a bit. Being the only weapon in this comparison that isn't first person, the Havoc automatically gets placed in last. You may believe that this means the scoped burst and the thermal tie once again, but this isn't exactly the case. The scoped burst is a hit scan weapon, while the thermal shoots projectiles, which are objectively harder to hit opponents with, so the scoped burst goes in first and the thermal goes in second. Now for a bit of a wild card category, the augments. Basically, the weapon with the most amount of augments that buff its performance wins. And would you believe me if I told you that the scoped burst and thermal are tied once again, both having 4 augments that buff them, leaving the Havoc in last with only 1 augment that can buff it. Finally, we move on to the final and probably most important category, time to kill. And I won't be doing both 100 and 200 health comparisons, as the placement is the same for both, so I'm just going to stick with 200 health. This may come as a shock to you, but the thermal DMR is actually in first place with a time to kill of exactly a second. In second place is the Havoc with 1.08 seconds, and last is the Scoped Burst with 1.14 seconds. And now that we have gone through every category, we can finally get to the end results. In third place, being the best of the worst, is the Scoped Burst SMG with 13 points, which I absolutely was not expecting. Honestly, I thought it would be in second, but that honor goes to the Thermal DMR with 11 points, meaning that the certified worst weapon in the game is none other than the Havoc Suppressed Assault Rifle, surprising absolutely nobody. This weapon is a complete piece of shit and more than deserving of this title. Even after being buffed this season, it still sucks, and that's all because of how abysmally long it takes to equip. You could enlist in the military and fight an entire war before being able to equip this gun. But that's it from me. If you found this video informative or at the very least funny, consider dropping a like and subscribing. I'd appreciate it. And always remember that if you see a Havoc rifle, to never pick it up, even if it's the only weapon you can find. You're better off just using your pickaxe. See ya.
Hold on.